Hello, and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace, while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the timeless city of Zurich, Switzerland. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The train from Basel pulled into Zurich Hauptbahnhof just after 9 in the morning, arriving with the punctuality that seemed to be written into Swiss DNA. Lyla stepped onto the platform and paused for a moment, taking in the grand architecture of the station, the iron and glass roof filtering the July sunlight, the pristine platforms, the sense of order and efficiency that pervaded everything. Lyla's friend Zoey was waiting near the main hall, leaning against a column and scrolling through her phone. She looked up when Lyla approached, her face breaking into a wide smile, and pulled her into a hug that felt genuinely happy. "You made it. How was the journey?" "Perfect. Swiss trains really do run like clockwork. How are you, Zoey? How's Zurich treating you?" "Can't complain. The city's treating me well, though the cost of living still makes me wince. But come on, let's get out there. I want to show you everything." They'd met on a long flight to Singapore years ago, one of those chance airplane conversations that had somehow evolved into real friendship. They'd bonded over shared stories of travel mishaps and favorite places, exchanging contact information with genuine intention rather than empty politeness, and had stayed in touch with occasional messages and photos from wherever they happened to be. Outside the station, Zurich revealed itself in the bright morning light, clean, prosperous, beautiful, in that efficient Swiss way. The Bahnhofstrasse stretched before them, one of the world's most exclusive shopping streets, lined with banks and luxury boutiques, the street immaculately maintained. "We'll start here," Zoey said, though honestly, unless you're in the market for a watch that costs more than a car, this is more for looking than shopping. But it's iconic Zurich, so we should at least see it. They walked down Bahnhofstrasse, window shopping at stores that displayed their wares with minimal fanfare. A single watch, a handbag, a piece of jewelry, each item presumably worth thousands. The street was busy with well-dressed people, tourists with cameras, business people moving with purpose. "The thing about Zurich," Zoey said as they walked, "is that it can seem a bit buttoned up at first, very proper, very expensive, very Swiss. But there are pockets of real creativity and character if you know where to look. That's what I want to show you." They turned off Bahnhofstrasse and into the narrow streets of Niederdorf, and the atmosphere changed immediately. This was Zurich's old town, with medieval buildings painted in warm colors, cobblestone streets barely wide enough for cars, and a bohemian energy that contrasted sharply with the commercial grandeur of Bahnhofstrasse. Small shops sold everything from vintage clothing to artisan chocolates to handmade crafts. Cafes spilled out onto the sidewalks, their tables already occupied by people enjoying coffee and pastries. Street musicians played in doorways, their cases open for coins. "This is more my Zurich," Zoey said. "Still expensive, of course, but it does have soul." They climbed toward the Lindenhof, a small park perched on a hill overlooking the old town. The park was shaded by linden trees, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze, and offered views across the Limmat River to the university and the distant Alps, their peaks still showing snow despite it being July. This has been a fortified site since Roman times, Zoey explained, leaning against the stone wall that bordered the park. Now it's mostly used for chess. See? She pointed to several large chessboards built into stone tables, where elderly men were engaged in slow, contemplative games. They sat in comfortable silence, considering their moves, occasionally making a comment in Swiss German that Lyla couldn't follow. From the Lindenhof, they walked down toward the Limmat and crossed one of the bridges to see the Grossmünster, the iconic twin-towered church that was one of Zurich's most recognizable landmarks. The towers were distinctive, almost austere in their Romanesque style, topped with what looked like crowns. Inside, the church was cool and quiet, the stone walls thick enough to muffle the city sounds outside. The interior was simpler than many European churches, the Protestant Reformation having stripped away much of the ornamentation. But there was beauty in the simplicity, in the clean lines, and the way light filtered through the modern stained glass windows by Augusto Giacometti. "We can go up in one of the towers if you want," Zoey offered. "The view is spectacular." They made the climb, the spiral staircase narrow and worn smooth by centuries of feet. At the top, they emerged onto the platform and were rewarded with a panoramic view of Zurich. The red roofs of the old town, the Limmat winding through the city, the lake stretching into the distance, and beyond it all, the Alps forming a dramatic backdrop. "On really clear days you can see all the way to the Sentis," Zoey said, pointing toward the mountains. "But today's a bit hazy, still beautiful though." They descended and crossed back over the river to visit the Fraumünster, another of Zurich's important churches, this one famous for its stained glass windows by Marc Chagall. Inside they stood in reverent silence, looking up at the windows in the choir. 5 panels in Chagall's distinctive style, filled with blues and greens and reds, depicting biblical scenes with dreamlike imagery. The light coming through the windows created pools of colored light on the stone floor, and Lyla found herself mesmerized by the way the colors shifted and overlapped, creating patterns that seemed to breathe and move. "I come here sometimes when I need to think," Zoey said quietly. "There's something about these windows. They're simultaneously ancient and modern, sacred and artistic." "Yes, a nice reset," Lyla observed. Outside, the morning had advanced toward midday, and Zoey suggested lunch at a place she knew near the lake. They walked along the Limmat, the water clear and moving swiftly, people swimming in designated areas despite it being a river in the middle of a city. "The Limmat is clean enough to swim in," Zoey explained. "In summer, people bring waterproof bags and float down the river from work. Very Zurich. Even relaxation is efficient." Lyla chuckled. From what she knew of Zoey, she guessed she had found her forever home. They stopped at a restaurant that was situated right on the lake, with tables on a terrace overlooking the water. They were seated with a view of the sailboats and swans, the lake sparkling in the midday sun. The menu was Swiss with modern touches, and they ordered Resti, the Swiss potato dish, topped with smoked salmon and crème fraîche, along with a fresh salad and glasses of Swiss white wine. The Resti arrived golden and crispy, the potatoes perfectly cooked, the salmon rich and smoky. They ate slowly, watching the lake activity, swimmers in the designated areas, paddleboarders gliding past, a small ferry making its rounds. Could we take a boat ride? Lyla asked. Sure, Zoey said. There are ferries that cross the lake, or we could do a short cruise. It's a nice way to see the city from a different perspective. They decided on a short ferry ride, boarding at the dock near the restaurant. The boat wasn't crowded, mostly locals using it as transportation, a few tourists with cameras. They found seats on the upper deck and settled in as the ferry pulled away from the shore. The lake stretched out before them, impossibly blue and clean, surrounded by hills and distant mountains. The shoreline was lined with elegant villas and parks, their gardens running down to the water. Other boats dotted the surface. Sailboats with bright spinnakers, motorboats pulling water skiers, the occasional yacht that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The ferry stopped at several points along the shore, people disembarking and boarding with that quiet efficiency. At Berkeley Platz, they got off to wander through the weekly market that was just beginning to pack up for the day. A few vendors still had produce on display, summer vegetables, fresh herbs, flowers in buckets of water. Zoey bought a small bouquet of wildflowers from an elderly woman who wrapped them carefully in paper, and they continued walking along the lakefront promenade. The path was busy with people, joggers, cyclists, families with children feeding swans, couples walking hand in hand. Ready for some art? Zoey asked, checking her phone for the time. The Kunsthaus is not far from here, and I think you'll love their collection. They walked to the Kunsthaus Zurich, the city's main art museum, and stepped into the cool, quiet interior. The museum was spacious and well lit, with a collection that spanned from medieval to contemporary. They gravitated naturally toward the Impressionist and modern sections. The Monet paintings were displayed in a room with perfect natural lighting. Water lilies and haystacks and cathedral facades, each one capturing light in that particular way that made you understand why he'd been revolutionary. Lyla stood in front of a water lily painting, watching how the colors seemed to shimmer and blend, how what appeared abstract up close resolved into perfect reflection and light from a distance. The Chagall room was equally impressive. Several paintings and some preparatory sketches, all in his distinctive dreamlike style. Floating figures, lovers embracing, village scenes rendered in impossible colors. There was joy in these paintings, even the melancholic ones, a sense of wonder and memory and longing all mixed together. I love how Chagall sees the world, Zoey said, studying a painting of a couple floating above a village. Like reality is just a suggestion, and emotion and memory are equally real. They spent over an hour in the museum, wandering from room to room, occasionally pausing to really study a particular work, other times just letting the art wash over them. The building itself was peaceful, with few crowds and guards, who seemed content to let visitors take their time. Outside, the afternoon had shifted toward early evening, the light becoming softer and more golden. Zoey suggested they head to Zurich West, a former industrial area that had been transformed into a creative district. This is where the young people and artists are, she explained as they took the tram across the city. It's got a completely different vibe from the old town. More raw, more experimental. The viaduct was their first stop, a series of railway arches that had been converted into shops, bars, and restaurants. The shops were eclectic and interesting, vintage furniture stores, independent bookshops, design studios, a place that sold nothing but specialty olive oils. They browsed slowly, Zoey pointing out her favorites, occasionally stopping to chat with a shopkeeper she knew. In one shop that sold handmade ceramics, Zoey showed Lyla a particular set of mugs she loved, made by a local artist. "I've been collecting them slowly," she admitted. "One every few months when I can justify the expense." "Turns your morning coffee into something special," Lyla observed. They continued through Zurich West, the neighborhood revealing its character gradually. Street art covered walls and construction barriers, bringing color and commentary to industrial spaces. Small parks had been created in unexpected places, people gathering on the grass with beers and takeaway food. A brewery occupied an old factory building, its outdoor seating packed with people enjoying the summer evening. "There's a shop I want to show you," Zoey said, leading her down a side street. "It's tiny, easy to miss, but they sell the most incredible honey from Swiss mountain regions." The shop was indeed small, barely more than a storefront, but inside it was carefully curated. Jars of honey in different shades from nearly white to dark amber, each one labeled with the region and the predominant flowers. The owner explained the differences in Swiss German first, then switched to English when he realized they needed it, describing the delicate alpine flower honey and the robust forest honey with equal enthusiasm. Lyla bought a jar of honey labeled as coming from wildflowers in the Engadin Valley, charmed by the description and the beautiful simplicity of the packaging. Zoey picked up her usual, a dark, strong honey from chestnut forests that she said was perfect with cheese. They wandered back toward the center as the evening settled in, the air cooling slightly but still pleasant. The Limmatquai beckoned, and they walked along the river as the buildings began to light up, their reflections dancing on the water. The river was busy with the evening crowd, people finishing work and meeting friends, tourists photographing the illuminated churches, swimmers still braving the water. The sound of conversation in multiple languages drifted on the air, mixing with music from riverside bars and the ever-present sound of the water flowing. "I love this time of day in Zurich," Zoey said as they walked, "especially in summer, when everyone comes outside. The city can seem reserved during the day, but in the evening it opens up a bit." They crossed several bridges, each one offering different views of the city, the old town rising on one side, the modern districts on the other, the churches and towers creating a distinctive skyline. Swans glided beneath the bridges, graceful and unconcerned with the human activity above. As the light faded completely and the streetlights came on, Zoey suggested dinner in Seefeld, a neighborhood near the lake that she said had good restaurants and a more local feel. "There's a place you're gonna love," she said. "Great food, and on Fridays they have live music, usually jazz or acoustic stuff. Very chill, very Zurich in the best way." "Ah, right on. We are getting to know each other pretty well. You'll be finishing my sentences soon," Lyla said with a wink and a smile. The restaurant was in a residential street, its exterior understated but welcoming. Inside, it was cozy and warm, with exposed brick walls and wooden tables, candles providing soft lighting. A small stage in the corner held a piano and 2 chairs, microphones already set up for the evening's performance. They were seated at a table near the window, and the server brought them menus and water, infused with cucumber and mint. The menu featured Swiss cuisine with contemporary touches, and they ordered fondue, because when in Switzerland, Zoey insisted, along with a bottle of white wine from the Lavaux region. The fondue arrived in a traditional pot over a small flame, the melted cheese fragrant with wine and garlic and a hint of kirsch. They dipped bread cubes and small potatoes, the cheese stretching in long strings, the taste rich and satisfying. It was indulgent and communal, the kind of meal that encouraged lingering and conversation. "This never gets old," Zoey said, fishing out a piece of bread. "I've lived here long enough that I should probably be over it, but fondue still makes me happy." "I agree," Lyla said. "When I was a kid, we only took our fondue pot down from the closet top shelf, like once a year, maybe less. I always wished it was more often." As they ate, the musicians arrived, a woman with a guitar and a man who sat at the piano. They began with some quiet instrumental pieces, getting warmed up, and then the woman started to sing, her voice soft and clear, performing what sounded like French chansons, mixed with original compositions. The music created a perfect backdrop for the evening, present but not intrusive, enhancing the atmosphere rather than demanding attention. Other diners continued their conversations, but the sound level dropped naturally, everyone unconsciously making space for the music. They ordered dessert, meringues with thick double cream and berries, a Swiss specialty that was impossibly sweet and light. The meringues dissolved on the tongue, the cream rich and thick, the berries adding tartness that balanced the sweetness. The musicians shifted to more upbeat numbers, the piano providing a rhythmic foundation while the guitar added melody and the woman's voice wove through it all. A few people in the restaurant swayed slightly in their seats, caught up in the rhythm. Lyla found herself relaxing completely, the wine and the food and the music and the soft lighting, all combining to create a sense of perfect contentment. She looked at Zoey across the table, her face lit by candlelight, smiling at something one of the musicians had said between songs, and felt grateful for friendships that survived distance and time, for chance meetings on airplanes that turned into something real. The music continued, shifting from French to English to what might have been Italian, the melodies flowing one into another like a gentle river. The woman's voice rose and fell, sometimes strong and clear, other times barely above a whisper, the piano following her lead, creating space and filling it in equal measure. Outside the window, Zurich settled into night, lights glowing in windows across the street, the occasional person walking past with a dog or returning home from somewhere, the distant sound of trams, and the ever-present whisper of the lake nearby. The city felt safe and contained, predictable in the best way, a place where things worked, and people were looked after, and beauty was valued alongside efficiency. The musicians played a final song, something slow and contemplative, about journeys and homecoming and the places we carry with us no matter where we go. The piano notes fell like rain, steady and soothing, and the guitar added warmth, and the woman's voice tied it all together, singing about mountains and lakes, and the particular blue of Swiss summer skies. Lyla closed her eyes, just listening, letting the music wash over her. She thought about the day, the medieval streets and modern art, the mountain views and the lake sparkling in the sun, the taste of rice tea and fondue and mountain honey. She thought about Zoey navigating this precise, beautiful city, finding her place in it, creating a life that honored both adventure and stability. The music continued, the notes blending together, and Lyla felt herself floating on the sound, weightless and peaceful, the day's memories settling into something she'd carry with her, another story to add to the collection, another city that had revealed itself through a friend's eyes, another evening of perfect contentment in an imperfect world that somehow, in moments like these, felt exactly right.